Hello beautiful soul, thank you so much for joining me today. It has been another hot jiffy, but I'm here, back again for another video. Before I begin, I would like to express my gratitude towards the ancestors of this land. All the ways they have respected and nourished and protected this beautiful sacred land. All the ways that they lived completely in harmony with this land, were in service to this land, and continue to support and guide the traditional custodians of today. Thank you so much for doing all that you did. Thank you so much for allowing me this beautiful opportunity to be on this land and to be of service to it in whatever way I can. I thought this could be a really interesting video. I get asked this question all the time, you know, when you have those like what do you do questions, or when I'm just talking to a client. So I was like, well, why not make a video about it? Could be interesting. I've always identified as spiritual, I guess. Like ever since I was younger, I always liked crystals. I just gravitated to them. And when I was younger, we lived in a few houses that had spirits in them, and they would always play tricks on me. It was really scary. I think I started to dive more into spirituality maybe 5 years ago. I've always been a very empathetic person who, since I was really little, I would feel the emotions of others very deeply, and it was hard. When I was 27, my clairsentience was incredibly strong. I would go into a room and feel the heaviness of other people. I would feel a lot of the suffering of other people. I would pick up on other people's anxiety, and it was overwhelming. Around the beginning of last year, when I was volunteering at a Hare Krishna village where there was a lot of black obsidian in the land, which brought up a lot of trauma, that's when I worked through so much that my claircognizance and my clairvoyance started to come through. Almost exactly a year ago, I stopped traveling around Australia and I made the decision that I was going to travel overseas. I had been wanting to go to Southeast Asia for years, so I decided to start there. My intention for traveling overseas was that I already knew that my soul's purpose was helping people and supporting them on their spiritual journey. I just didn't know what that looked like yet. I figured if I went to different spiritual communities around the world, I would eventually figure it out. And so the first place I went to was Bali. When I went to Bali, I was talking to Simi about how my intention was to find out what my soul's purpose was. She just said, well, just keep doing what you're doing as you are and you will figure it out. I took her advice. From when I was in Bali, there were a few times when I would be in a public place and I would see people coming through for someone, so I would approach them and ask them if they were open to receiving a message, and that's how I started practicing channeling. For the next 5 months, as I traveled through Thailand, Portugal, every maybe second day I would keep doing that in public places, and that's literally how I practiced. By November last year, when I got to Glastonbury, that's when I was ready to do sessions. And the more I practiced, more different types of messages came through. I distinctly remember when people who had passed away started to slowly come through, when I would see visions of like people who had exchanged messages to each other, and that hadn't really happened before. I remember when I started to get sensations in my body that pertain to the energies of another person. And even now, I'm definitely still learning. I become more and more sure of what I'm channeling. Like with anything that's new, it's really about trusting yourself, being confident in yourself. Especially from when we're school age, we are so conditioned to justify and understand and analyze everything with our heads. We're not taught to trust in our gut feeling, just to feel. And operate from our inner knowing. And channeling is literally all about going with your feeling. The worst thing you can do is get in your mind, because as soon as you get in your mind, you're blocked from channeling. So that's been a really interesting one to navigate. That is definitely a practice that you need to learn. Like even now, something that I'm navigating is when I was first doing paid readings, I was doing them in a lot of conscious communities where people are already very tapped into their heart and very open. So a reading was a very collaborative process where, you know, I would deliver messages and they would share a little bit about why that resonates with them, and then it would allow me to dive deeper into whatever the messages were, or it would just provide me with the confirmation that, you know, I was going down the right track. Being in a city, one of the biggest things I have definitely learned is, you know, people aren't able to operate from their hearts as easily. And so I do a lot of readings where, as lovely as the person is, like, and you know, I really value all of my clients, I will sit there for like half an hour and just be channeling, and I won't get a lot of feedback from them. So like half the time I don't even know whether it really resonates with them or not. So I have to keep checking in, like, is there anything you'd like to add? Are there any questions you'd like to ask? Does that resonate with you at all? So that's been very interesting. And just to practice being in your center, being in your knowing, regardless of whether you are receiving that confirmation or not, whether you are triggering your client or not, that has been a very interesting experience. One of the big things when it comes to energetic sensitivity and doing this sort of work, any sort of spiritual work, you need to have very strong boundaries. I've definitely worked on boundaries so much in the last year, especially all the more so as I step more and more into this field of work. When you are empathetic and you are energetically sensitive, there is a part of you that deeply, inherently wants to help other people who are suffering. And this is a very innate human quality. We all don't want other people to suffer. When you're energetically sensitive, the more you are wanting to help other people, the more that people are going to energetically and just in the physical world, emotionally dump on you. As a human being, you only have a certain amount of bandwidth to hold all of this, whether it is other people's emotional stuff that they're going through or energetic. That's when you have to be very clear in the physical about your boundaries, in a loving way, of course, and that starts to filter through on your energetic sensitivity too. Literally a year ago, I was so energetically sensitive that if I was to walk into any room with any number of people in it, I would just get flooded and I would have to go and cleanse that. Now, I'm in Melbourne, a city of 5 million people, and you know, the start was hard and sometimes it still is challenging, but a lot of the time I'm not going to take on the stress and the overwhelm of the people around me. Or at least it's, the way I describe it is, it's kind of like white noise in the background. You can feel that it's there, but it's not fully affecting you. And that's the way that it needs to be, because people are always going to be suffering, but it is not your responsibility to save everyone. It is the responsibility of that individual to save themselves and to give themselves the nourishment that they need. Another interesting thing with boundaries when you go into especially like psychic medium work is, as soon as you tell people that you do this work, they're like, oh, channel messages for me, or like, oh, what can you see about me? And it's like, look, if I'm friends with you and something naturally comes through, just pretty much for me, if something naturally comes through and it's very insistent that it needs to be delivered, and as long as I have emotional capacity and I'm not tired, then I will deliver it. I'm not just gonna go up to any random person and channel messages for them. Like, I don't want to work 24 hours just as much as anyone else. I love what I do. I deeply love helping people, but to a certain extent. Like, if I'm gonna go out to ecstatic dance, I'm there to do ecstatic dance. I'm not there to work. I think that's pretty much everything I want to say. It's getting a bit dark now and I think I might go climb a tree. So with that, thank you so much for watching and I will talk to you in a jiffy. Bye, sending you lots of love, bye.